line of your reel, to the rods, to the anglers, to the lures on the end of your hook. Let's talk about those big bass here on Co-Angler's Corner with your hosts, Rob Welch and John Stoudinger.
Good evening, everybody. I'm John.
How y'all are? Cajun Rob here hanging out with you.
All right. We have a good friend of mine. I met him back in 2012, which, we were reminiscing before the show. And he's from Connecticut. I'm from New York. He's very knowledgeable in every aspect of fishing. I don't care if it's bank fishing, co-angling, pro side. He does seminars. He used to do a lot more seminars, but he's not doing as many now. But Mr. Frank Geiner. Let's bring Frank on.
Absolutely.
Hey, guys.
Let's go,
Frank. How are you, sir?
How's it going?
All right.
Good. So for those of you who don't know Mr. Geiner, he's 2012 New York State Boater of the Year.
Oh, that's you.
Oh, everyone. There you go. There you go.
Show off.
Yeah, he did it on purpose.
No, actually, I was reading his name. I'm like, oh, okay. No, Frank and I were Anglers of the Year. He was the pro side. I was the co-angler side back in 2012. And we got the displeasure of traveling to Maine to fish Lake Sebago.
Oh, man.
That's the year that Paul Mueller had an 8-pound largemouth weighed in.
Yep.
And I think he had almost as much as our entire 10-man team at the time.
Yeah.
Dang.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Were you on the team where we went to Capasacani in Maine?
No.
That was.
I was only on it that 1 year. That's really the first and only year I fished the entire season.
Oh, that's awesome.
So, yeah. But no, I wanted to get Frank on to have him talk about jig fishing. I love jigs. He loves jigs. He makes jigs. He's not here. He's not going to push his product. So this is not an infomercial, and he knows it. But he's probably one of the most knowledgeable men around all aspects of fishing up in the Northeast. I'd have to put him and Ed Cohen up there.
That's my old team tournament partner.
Oh, is he?
Hey. Oh, man, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Did you teach him everything you know?
No, but I like to think we taught each other stuff.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
Awesome. So, Frank, if you don't mind, go ahead and talking a little bit about your history and what you got into fishing and fishing tournaments and things like that.
Wow. Well, I really got involved fishing, years and years ago. I think I really started getting heavy into fishing about 16, as was my first tournament on the Connecticut Federation back then. It was the Federation back then. There was no, it was no Bass Nation. It was Connecticut Federation. So I fished my first tournament when I was like 16. And to be honest with you, the only reason I fished it was because I got tired of being a non-boater and nobody would take you. So, so what I did at 16 was we were all part of a club, and Connecticut had a rule where in order to qualify for the state team that you fished a 2-day tournament. Okay. They didn't take it out of points. It was just, you sent it, you could send half of your club to this tournament. So what the guys in the club would do would be, there'd be like 6 or 7 guys in the club, and all of them would have like their own extra person in the club. So there was always double people, and they would always could go to that tournament. And I was working at Hank's Tackle Shop in Danbury back when I was like 15 years old. That's how I got started making jigs and everything.
Oh, cool.
And I was like, hey, I want to go. Nobody takes me. So Hank, the owner of this, said, listen, you're in the club. Just go fish Connecticut Fed tournament. So I put my money in, fished the Connecticut Fed tournament. And the first tournament, I caught 1 fish on Candlewood. It was like, I thought it was the greatest thing in the world. And then the second tournament was on Lake Lillanoa, and I ended up, I think, in 4th or 5th and just missed lunker. So that's all it took.
Yep.
That's all it took. I was hooked ever since then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
But so it's so, and I never really understood why I loved it so much, because it wasn't like my dad, I begged him to take me fishing, but it just wasn't his thing. And I don't know why I loved it, but yeah, he took me a couple of times. And then after that, I just got hooked up at the tackle shop, and I was around some amazing people. Like we were talking a little bit before. Well, first off, Hank Millard, Rich Zaleski. He's another one from Rich G's Fishing. He's been a writer for Fish and Facts magazine, Bassmaster. He used to do a lot of stuff with the Lindners, and yeah, he's a mentor of mine. And I just was around a lot of really good Northeast fishermen. Art Singer, JJ who's my tournament partner now. Growing up in it was, I think it was one of the best things ever. I mean, I started when I was in 1979. So like we were talking about before, the jigs. I mean, I remember the very first living rubber jig, to come to Connecticut. It was those guys that brought it from they went out to some tournament out in Oklahoma or something, and they brought back Arky jigs.
Yep.
Yeah. And I'm talking old school Arky jigs with the gold hooks and
oh man.
Yeah. So yeah, that's how it all got started for me. And then it just, morphed into this tournament stuff. I've always been competitive, and I just loved fishing the tournaments. I love the formats. I loved everything about it. I think I was 18. I bought my first boat. I sold my car so I could get a boat. I had no way of towing it to the tournaments.
Oh, hey.
Yeah, I used to just give people gas money. I was like, oh, you got a truck? Hey, take me to the tournament, and I'll pay for your gas or something.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah, that's how it all started.
Huh.
So I could talk to my wife and not worry about a truck. I can talk her into getting me a boat.
Yeah, just get the boat. There's plenty of people with trucks.
Yeah.
Less people with boats.
There you go.
And if you have a boat, I guarantee you get somebody to go with you.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. Yep.
Hey, Rob and I are probably living proof of that one.
Oh yeah. Oh, absolutely. Every day.
But no, I met, like I said before, I met Frank back in 2012. He's actually an inspiration because we are the only team that year when we fished the fantastic Lake Sebago, where everybody weighed a turn fishing for both days.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and Frank had to come over. I had a fish that was, I don't even know if it was 12 inches or not. I had everyone on our team look at it, and we knew we weren't going to win the tournament. And so Frank came over and he looked at it. He goes, "Wade in." All right. So I ended up weighing in, and yeah, we ended up taking third, I think, in that tournament.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, that's a good tournament. That's the tournament where I met all the Spanish team. Nobody knew that I spoke Spanish. I'm bilingual.
Oh, cool.
So I became I was on a few state teams after that, and so I became the pseudo interpreter for the Spanish team. So every time they did show up, I was the one that ran around with them. As a matter of fact, the one year I wasn't on the team, I didn't fish New York. They actually hired me to go down to where the heck was it? Well, one of them was on the Connecticut River, so I could translate for them on the Connecticut River.
Oh, heck.
Yeah.
And that's the one that Pickard won, or Pickard won New York.
Yeah.
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 The man that you beat out for Angler of the Year. But no, yeah, you tell us a little bit about that painting behind you.
Oh, yeah. So we were talking about it before. So
yep.
I don't know if you can see it right here. So one of the gentlemen on the Spanish team, I didn't really know because I just, I'm talking to him, and you talk to him about fishing, and the beauty about bass fishing is I've met some amazing people from, the poorest of the poor to billionaires with a B.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And all walks of life. I don't care. You'll find somebody that does everything. And so one of the Spanish guys, Cesar, he apparently is a really well-known artist. in Spain. And this was actually a picture from a GoPro of me releasing a smallmouth. And he looked at some of the pictures that I had, and he says, I'd love to paint that. And he painted it for me and sent it home. So,
hey.
Yeah.
Yep.
So it's a pretty amazing piece of art. It's the only piece that I have.
That's nice. That is nice, man. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's a great keepsake. It's like one of a kind, and nobody will ever have anything like it. And I love it.
It's 101.
Yeah, exactly. So
when he's world famous, you got your retirement fund.
Yeah, and he actually was the top guy on one of those teams.
Yeah. Oh, nice.
Oh.
Yeah, so he actually went to the national from the regional. So, yeah.
Hey, Andrew Pulliam in here watching us as always. So Frank, you mentioned the Arky jig, living rubber skirts.
Mm-hmm.
I love the living rubber. I used to do a lot of damage with them.
Yep.
And let's talk a little bit about your rods, your setup for jig fishing.
Well, it really depends. And, a lot of people just think jig fishing is any jig you have and you throw it in your box. But really, there's like, I think like three types of jigs. Number one, you got a football jig.
Yep.
And a football jig is really gotten really popular because people are fishing more offshore, and it's more of a strolling jig where you can, pull it along the bottom and you're covering a lot of water and you're fishing ledges and ridges and stuff. But then there's more or less a flipping jig. Now that could be, it falls into two categories for me. It falls into a weed jig and a regular rock and wood jig. I happen to grab the one here. I don't know if you can see it. I'll hold it up. So This is one of the ones. Well, let me put it up. All right, it's over here. There it is. There we go.
Yes, opposite. There you go.
I'll get it. But what's important about this jig, let me put it this way, is you see the line tie?
Yep.
Let me see if I can pull it out. So the line tie is the flat eye.
Yeah.
90% of my jigs are flat eye. The only thing that will be a vertical eye was if I'm fishing a grass type jig. It's just the way the jig reacts. Like when you're flipping wood and rock, if it's a straight eye, the jig tends to roll when you pull it.
Yep.
And that's okay in the grass, but when you're trying to drag it into a tree or into heavy rock, it's going to want to grab. Where the flat eye will hop. So when you pull it, it'll actually come up. It won't twist.
Oh, got you.
So, that to me is pretty important. I like I said, 90% of my jigs are flat eye jigs. The other thing is material. I mean, I still have a lot of the old school living rubber left, and I still try to fish that as much as I can. You can still get rubber, but it's usually round. It's not the old squared off old rubber. And I know some companies tried to duplicate it, but it's never been the same. It doesn't cut the same. It just doesn't shred the same. So, but the round rubber is actually pretty good, and it's the closest thing to the old school jig that you can find.
Yep.
With the advent of the silicone skirts and stuff, I mean, there's a lot of cool colors and combinations that, God, you never had with the rubber back then. I mean, back then you had black, brown, white, and chartreuse and blue and orange.
Yep.
Any combination you wanted to make of those, that's what you had. That's why you had brown and orange jigs. You had black and blue jigs. You had black jigs, brown jigs, black chartreuse jigs. But now, I mean, with all the flake combinations and the black and blue flake, the black and red flake, the black neons, I mean, it's amazing what you can really, come up with. And I've come up with a few, that I just have confidence in, where I'll, different shades of green pumpkin and watermelons, and you can make cool little combinations of half rubber, half silicone. And the silicone definitely doesn't act like the rubber. I mean, the rubber definitely flares It's more buoyant, so you can flip a 3/4 ounce jig with the regular rubber, and I think it sinks it a little slower.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, that's that's primarily the jig. I'm not a big, even though a lot of guys around here call me about, like, in the springtime for the hair jigs and stuff. I still make a lot of the old synthetic hair jigs and the marabou jigs for the guys, like especially up north for the smallmouth fishing. I have a little Instagram account, Team Pakataka Rocco. Long story on the name, but I've done. I'll post some of the stuff that I create. I love creating jigs, and part of why I got into it was you could never find what I always wanted.
Yep.
You could get the right skirt, but it'd have a garbage head on it, or the hook would be a gaff. I don't know why everybody thinks that jigs have to have like 6.0 hooks in them.
Yeah.
I started now. The trend is going to compact jigs. Well, I got news for you. We were making compact jigs 20 years ago.
Yep.
I mean, this is a little 3/8 jig with a 2.0 hook. I mean, this is something we've been throwing forever.
Yep.
And now all of a sudden it's the fashion. Everybody's into little compact jigs.
Yep.
But so that's kind of how it got me started. And just creating what I couldn't find. And actually, it was my first job when I was 15, was when Hank brought back the Arky jigs. We couldn't get enough of them. So these guys made molds, and we had the Arky head molds, and he had a company, and it was a Hanky jig. and I can't tell you how many thousands I've tied. I mean, thousands.
Wow.
It's crazy. And so that's how it all started with the jig fishing. The other thing I noticed is, people are like really, I don't know how many times I've drawn non-boaters, and I'll say, well, I'm flipping a jig, and they're like, oh, okay, I got one. And it'll be like a little 1/4 ounce football head or something.
Yep.
It's like, there's a lot more to it, because you can't be flipping a dock, or they're trying to wonder, well, they're hanging up in the trees and everything. And it's like, there really is, there's categories, and you need to have all those categories if you want to be a jig fisherman.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right tool for the job.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. It's just like anything else. Now, as far as the rod setup goes, my football jigs up to about 1 ounce. I'll throw anything from a 3/8. Sometimes, most of the time, it's half or 3/4, and that's kind of standard for flipping or a football jig. My casting rod for actually casting and fishing a jig is usually a medium heavy, like a 7.1, 7.3 rod, 15-pound fluoro.
Yep.
Used to be all monofilament back in the day, but big game was the best. But the fluorocarbon, normally 15-pound is really all you need. I know some guys like going a little lighter on 12. It starts to get a little scary with 12 and a 3/4 ounce jig, but 15-pound is usually pretty good. For flipping the grass and flipping wood and stuff, usually I go 20 or 25-pound fluoro. I don't really think it much matters with the heavy line. When you're throwing it in heavy cover, I mean, I think the last thing you got to worry about is the line, when them seeing the line. They just see it drop and they eat it. And so that's pretty much the setup, is a normal 7.6 heavy action flipping stick with 20-pound fluoro. But I don't fish braid a lot. The only time I really fish braid is when I go to Florida.
Yep.
I think you can do everything up here you need to do with the 20 and 25-pound fluoro on a flipping stick. And it's a little more forgiving.
Yeah.
It's a little easier to tie. It's for a while when I was trying to flip with braid, while it's really efficient, in, grass because it'll cut through it. Some of the rods really just aren't built for braid, I don't think, because you need more of a parabolic bend. You need to have a little give, because I've noticed that I used to have a lot of fish throw a jig flipping with braid. And I think it's just because even though fluorocarbon says it's got no stretch, it's got a little bit of stretch.
Correct.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And, I think what happens is, you open up that gash, that hole, when you set the hook, and they just tend to throw a big, heavy jig. Plus, if you're flipping a 3/4 ounce jig, because that's primarily what I flip a lot, and that's a big, heavy head that's flopping around in there. You're just giving them extra leverage to chuck it.
Absolutely.
As far as trailer goes on a jig, that's the other thing that's, to me, kind of important. I stick to pretty basic trailers. Old school, I still have the original pork frogs.
Yep.
I don't care what anybody says. There's nothing better than that in cold water.
Cool.
Correct.
Come summertime, the trailer that I've been using a lot now is Kitech makes a jig trailer, and they make it in a medium size and they make a large size. If you go and look in some of the websites for Kitech in Japan, you can get the real tiny ones. They make a small, and then they make one that's a small medium.
Right.
But the medium kind of fits everything for the casting. It's a great football jig trailer. The other thing too is just both sides of the sizes of the Zoom Super Chunks.
Yep.
And you don't have to go crazy. Black, green pumpkin, black blue if you like it, black neon sometimes. But you could get away with just black and green pumpkin. You don't need anything special.
Yeah. Oh, speaking about pork chunks, I still use them. There's a guy here in East Kentucky still makes pork chunks. Does an awesome job. Paw Ease.
Yep.
Awesome guy. Great guy.
Yeah, I know exactly who he is. I bought some from him.
Yeah, I got some. Great guy.
Yep. And then and Uncle Josh started making them recently again.
Yep.
They still have the dyes, and there's I don't know, they're still not as good as the old ones.
No.
But hey, you got to get what you can get. A Strike King used to make the Bohogs.
Yep. I had some. Yep.
And if you really want to get old school, there was one it was called, if I remember correctly, it was like, and it might have been the Bohog, which was hairy pork. There was a company called Super Pork.
Yep.
And then there was one where you actually had the hair on it from the.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it was gross.
Yeah.
Yeah, no. I'd stick to the Uncle Josh.
Yeah.
That brings you back to being in Germany.
Oh yeah. That's a little creepy. Stop.
Yeah.
But again with jigs, you don't have to get fancy.
No.
Black, brown, any kind of combination of that. If you're just starting out and you're like, I don't know what to do because there's so many different colors, just straight black, straight brown, some green pumpkins, and that's it. That's all you need.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I was talking to a guy, Jeff Tejan, years ago.
Mm-hmm.
He fished on the pro circuit for a year or two.
Yep.
And he said there's 3 colored jigs you always have to have: black, black, and black. Yeah,
there you go.
Yep. Can't go wrong there.
He goes, exactly. when I get a wild hair, I'll put a brown trailer on it.
Yep. Exactly.
And he's throwing 1 ounce jigs, 1 ounce, and so I learned, when I was co-angler of the year, I threw a lot of black stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
I'm like, if it's not just a jig, so like guys throwing black craws, black jigs.
Yeah.
But
one of the things I have seen that matters, just a little jig tip too, is so say you have your trailer like a super chunk.
Yep.
A lot of people, you see, I start by threading the trailer on.
Yep.
And it makes it a little more squatty, compact. And I'll find that they'll eat that good sometimes. And sometimes I'll hang the trailer. And I know that sounds silly. It's like, wow, does it really make that much difference? But if you look at the profile of the jig, I think sometimes it really does. Like when you get that squatty fat look. Sometimes they really key in on that. And sometimes when you hang the trailer and you got this big, long bait, maybe depending on what they're eating at the time, I've seen it where it makes a difference. So
Absolutely.
you go through an area and you get a few bites, and then maybe you come back and just hang the trailer and make it a little bit bigger. You come back and get a couple extra bites.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. That's something you can't do with a pork frog, but you can with the plastic trailers.
Now, I fished with the guy, JP Lamphere. He used to trim his pork frog.
Yep.
Take the fat off it, but leave the skin.
Yeah. I don't know.
And he said it held it up a little bit. I'm like, of course he was throwing a 3/8 ounce jig.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. If you're throwing a 1 ounce jig, it's not holding anything up.
No.
and I know a lot of guys used to trim them. I trimmed them. I've sliced them. I've tried everything. I usually just leave it alone. First off, when you trim them, they turn white.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I can't deal with the white belly on there. Even though I know in my head it doesn't matter.
All right.
The very first fish I caught on a jig was a black hanky jig, and the only pork frog I could get at the time, because we couldn't find pork frogs a lot, and the only bottle I could buy was the number 11 Uncle Josh, and it was green, or it was green with the white spots.
Yep.
Picture a black jig with a green and white spot, and that was the very first, right? So that's all. That tells you everything you need to know. It's all half of it's all up in here.
Absolutely.
You're right. 90% of fishing is confidence.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But
yep.
No, I remember those days. You'd be fishing with the pork, not paying attention. 3 hours later, it's all shriveled up on your hook, and
yeah. And then you get really silly, like when you get into the hair jigs and stuff, like up here. Now everybody, all of a sudden, marabou's in fashion now. Swimming a marabou. I mean, guys up here were fishing marabou jigs in the fall. Black marabou with a 101 pork frog, which was a tiny pork frog, which you can't even get that size anymore.
Yep.
They would use that, or a piece of a worm on the back of a hair jig. And back when we talked about hair jigs up here, it was the imitation polar bear hair. They used to call it the craft fur.
Yep.
But the craft fur is not the same. You can't get the same kind of density. I've run into a couple of places, like every once in a while you'll get lucky. You'll go into like Joann Fabrics, and you'll get a sheet of it where it's like really thick, and you can actually make kind of a decent jig out of it. And again, with the hair jigs, black, and black.
Yep.
Everybody asks me for all these crazy colors. Black. That's all you need. But I mean, old school like trailers were. Mr. Twister used to make a phenom.
Yep.
Right. So a little 4-inch phenom. They cut a piece off of it and just put that on the back of a jig. Here's another old school bait. Do you guys ever remember a Snatrix?
Oh yeah. Yep.
No.
All right. Yeah. So the smoked Snatrix up here, that was the thing, man. A black hair jig with any kind of trailer if it was smoke.
Yep.
And the largemouth seemed to love it with a trailer. Now I don't know. It's everybody's kind of gotten away from it. And I'll throw it a little bit, but it's just like I don't know. I just don't have confidence. Usually the hair jig, you just throw them bald.
Yep.
Nothing on them.
And see, that's another thing I want to throw up here a little more is a hair jig. But like I don't get out that much, and when I do, it's usually a tournament. Mm-hmm. So I'm not going to experiment with something I have no confidence in a tournament.
Yeah.
So
I'll if you want to see some of the designs, let's see if I can change my name on the screen here. I'll put my Instagram thing. Edit the name and the headline. Let's see if I can do that. There. I'll so because you can spell. Everybody asks me. Here we go. Save.
Oh,
there it is. Team Pakataka Rocco.
Cool. I like it.
Yeah. It's a crazy name. I started it as a joke, and it kind of just took off. I've made I've made hair jigs for a lot of the elite anglers, and there's it's a lot of it's hard to find, especially on the hair jigs and the marabous.
Yep.
It's really hard to find a good quality jig anymore. Again,
Yep.
with the real hook or anything. So
down in Tennessee, like in Del Hollow, they like the floating fly in the winter. That's really hot down in Tennessee area.
Yeah. Now up here, I get asked for a little heavier heads, like eighth. The floating flies, I think, a lot of them are what, like 16th ounce?
Yeah, 16, maybe 32nd. I think 32nd
ounce, yeah. And they make more elaborate colors. It's a lot of blues and chartreuse and pinks and stuff. It's almost like a crappie jig.
Exactly. Yep.
But up here, a lot of the hair jigs and stuff, eighth, quarter, 3/16. Occasionally, the guys like the 3/8, but most of the time, they don't go much over a quarter ounce. And,
makes sense.
Yeah, straight black, straight brown. That's all you ever really need.
Absolutely.
Yeah. How far are you from Dale Hollow?
About hour and a half. I'm right below Lexington, Kentucky, so I'm not too far.
Oh, okay. Yeah, definitely. That's awesome. That's like hair jig capital of the world, isn't it?
Oh yeah, definitely. Well, my jig story is I started fishing back tournaments in 2017. First one I went to, Dale Hollow, it's like 39 degrees. It's spitting snow. It's miserable. We go in this little bitty creek, and I bet there was like 4 foot on each side of the boat. So I flipped my jig out there, just a brown jig, flip it out there, and I got professional overrun. So I get my loop out, pick it up. Hey, something on it. 3-pounder. I'm like, hey, dead stick, light bulb went off. Yep. So about 5 casts later, there's a log, like a 6-inch log. Flip it out there, and I'm like, oh, man, I'm hung. It was like, uh-oh. I feel it swimming off. I'm like, set the hook, 5-6. I caught 3 fish that day, 5-6 big fish, finished 5th on 3 fish that day on that jig.
That's awesome.
First BFL ever fished.
Yeah, it's so funny because and it's there's times where I've seen it make a difference, but man, there ain't nothing better to catch a big fish on than a jig. I'm sorry.
Oh, it is. That's that red trophy right there.
Yep.
So, yep.
Time has proven that jig is, if you want to get big bites, you stick to it. The jig is going to get you there. You might not catch 20 fish, but you're going to catch the 5 right ones, I think.
Yeah, quality. You always get the better fish. Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, people don't even like. I'll pull out a jig and they look at me like I've got 2 heads, and all I hear is creature bait. I'm so sick of hearing about creature baits. It's just like throw a jig.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, it's just what everybody has grown up with.
Yep.
I mean, think about it. When I started, there was no beavers or big fat flipping tubes or all these other crazy flipping baits, which all have their place. Don't get me wrong.
Oh yeah.
You'll definitely get a lot more bites throwing like a Strike King rodent or something. But I think if you want to catch a giant, you're going to catch it on a jig. And I don't care where you are.
Oh yeah.
Florida, up north in Maine, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, there's some old school guys, some old guys. They're fishing, and if I see them in the tournament and they're in the top 5 or 10, I'm like, jig bite was on because there's in the top 5 or top 10. I already know what there's fishing.
Oh yeah. And now everything's shifting to forward facing, which I love. I don't care. I love it. I think it's phenomenal.
Yeah.
And guys are starting to develop jigs for that.
Yep.
Or swimming type jigs. I've gotten guys that have wanted certain, like offshore, like the big hair jigs. I've done that for smallmouth up here too, but more or less, on the lighter side, the quarter and the 3/8 rather than the 1/2 ounce or the 5/8, just so they can swim it through fish.
Yeah, it's amazing. Some of the guys I fish with forward facing, they'll be in 100 foot of water, and the fish are like 5 to 10, 6 to 12. They're all right there. Just stacked.
Yep.
What got me jig fishing was we had a club tournament my first year in the club back in 2000, I think, 99, 2000, 90, I don't know, somewhere about then. And one of the guys who's always in the top 5 of tournaments says, hey, you throw a jig? I'm like, no. He goes, well, I don't have to worry about you then.
Ooh.
And I was like,
That's not nice.
no. So I went out and I tied on a 1 ounce jig, right? Because we were up at Black Lake for a week, and basically camaraderie and type of stuff. And I went out fishing with another guy, and so I'm flipping this 1 ounce jig. I get a bite, I set the hook, and it comes flying at me with a sunfish about this big. I'm like, what the heck is he doing? But that was my first ever fish on a jig.
Yeah, that's I can remember like yesterday. I tell you, right here from the bank, Marjorie Reservoir was where that black jig with the white spotted green work fry.
Yep.
Yeah, that was wasn't a giant. It was like a 2.5, but man, that got me psyched on it.
Oh yeah,
learning a lot.
Mine was about a 2.5 ouncer.
That won't even make a fish sandwich, man. Come on.
Yeah.
No.
Plus, there's nothing better than having a flipping stick in your hand, anyways.
Yeah,
that's a good way to win a tournament.
Oh yeah,
it is. I don't care. Anymore. I'm kind of little discouraged with, all these people coming out with football heads for smallmouth, because we were using football heads for smallmouth.
Oh God, yeah.
Years ago.
Yeah. Yeah. All of a sudden, it's like the new fad. Oh, a tiny, small football head with the 2 ounce. Like I said, we've been doing that for 20 years. Now all of a sudden, it got exciting. Everybody saw what it was and what it can do.
There were times I'd take the skirts off my spinnerbait and put them on a round ball.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Same principle.
Yep.
So.
And you know what? And you don't. This is probably going to be a bad thing, because I do sell some of the jigs. But it's not an expensive thing to accomplish. You can go to a lot of the lure parts online.
Yep.
You can buy the heads. You don't have to be a master jig tire. You can get the skirts already made.
Yep.
Pop them on. You're into a jig for $250.
Yep.
Yeah. No, you're not into some of these tungsten heads, which obviously that's been the thing for the last few years, and it has its purpose too. Obviously, the size of the head, what you have with a 3/4 ounce tungsten is probably comparable to like a 3/8 or a 1/2 ounce regular jig.
Yeah.
So when you're flipping grass, it makes you definitely more efficient. But feel on the rocks, I really do prefer the tungsten on the football heads now.
Yep.
You definitely feel a lot more. But that's like I said, you don't have to spend a ton of money to have a good setup. If you're a co-angler, and I think it's something you need to have in the boat.
Absolutely.
And you could spend probably $50, $50 to $100, and have yourself, one of the smaller planos, and have everything you'll need.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Football, flipping heads. And if you just stick to those two, you're pretty much going to have yourself covered.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Javen says, "Heyo."
Hey, Javen.
Football heads have gotten real popular around my area, especially the bigger ones, like the 1 ounce.
Sure.
And people are throwing them on braid and floral, the 20 pound, and they're snapping them through the weeds and getting that reaction strike.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I was with a guy, and I'm like, dude, why'd you cut your weed guard off? He goes, I don't want it.
Yeah, you don't need it.
Yep.
And I asked him, and he goes, well, I'm just going to, and I watched him. He would just sit there. He'd flip into the weeds, shake it a couple times, then rip it.
Yeah.
Yep.
But you know what? That's another thing. Like when I talked to you about, like when I started making my own, it's like the grades of weed guard is another thing. A lot of times you could get one that's way too soft. You could get one that was way too hard. You can find, fine, medium, and heavy now. And depending on the purpose, you could really tune when you make your own jigs, really specify what you want. You know, a heavy wood jig, you might want a little stiffer guard. Personally, I like that. I personally almost always I buy the medium standard weed guard.
Yep.
Okay.
One of the, I don't even know if they're on that website anymore, but there was fishingskirts.com, which is Boss Jigs.
Yeah.
Actually, that's Cliff Pace's website. It's Cliff Pace and Gary Klein that developed that came up with that website.
Oh yeah.
They have phenomenal jigs that you can buy. You know, $7 for a pack of 3 or a pack of 4, and just throw a skirt on it, and you're all set to go. And they make good quality stuff.
Nice.
Absolutely. Now on reels, do you go on your reel speed? Do you go like 7.5, or just kind of depends on time of year? How you go with what reel to use? I guess.
Well, so obviously I work with Luz. As far as gear ratio is concerned, and I'm sure guys that are really technique specific will tell you it matters.
Yep.
I personally don't think it matters.
Yeah.
I almost use an 8-to-1 on everything.
Okay.
I have some 7.5s, but the majority of my reels are 8-to-1. I don't know. I could be wrong, but as far as when you make a cast and your line comes off the spool and shrinks on the diameter, are you really always at 7-to-1 or 8-to-1? Because as that shrinks and increases, that changes your retrieve.
Yep.
So to me, speed kills. Let's get the jig back in.
Yeah.
Pick up as much time as you can.
Especially if you get one against a jig and runs right at you, and you're trying to catch up.
Actually, I think you're more efficient with a faster reel, anyways, in just about everything.
Yeah, get a few more casts in during the day. Absolutely.
And you know what? Again, if you like you with the co-anglers, if you're limited on rod and reel combinations and outfits, well, first off, a medium heavy with an 8-to-1 reel, God, you can do just about anything you want with that combination.
Yep.
If you had 3 of those on the boat with you, that's everything. That's your buzzbait rod. That's your spinnerbait rod, top waters, chatterbait rod, your jig fishing rod, worm rod, Carolina rig rod. I mean, that's everything. That's everything you need. You can do with that.
Yep.
So I just think, as far as reel speed goes, I don't think doing a 7.5-to-1 or an 8-to-1. I think go faster rather than slower. I know some of the guys that'll tell you about the crankbaits and stuff. Yeah, they get into the, the real slow crankers, the 6-to-1, 6-8-to-1. I don't know. I'm not a crankbait guy. I got $8 billion worth of crankbaits.
That sounds familiar.
Yeah. I've got like the 3 that I use.
No, I think I have about 150 crankbaits or so.
150? I got 150 crammed into one box.
Well, if I make 50 casts a year on a crankbait, I just Joe Kuklis wants to know: do leaders matter on a jig?
Well, when you mean leaders, are you doing braid to fluoro? Because if you're doing here now, this is personal preference. I know a lot of guys that fish braid to fluoro fishing a jig. Okay, yeah. I won't do it. If I'm going to use braid, I go straight braid. If I'm going to use fluoro, I'm going to go straight fluoro. I am not going to wing back on a flipping stick that's a heavy action rod and have a knot between me and setting the hook on that fish. I don't care how good of a knot you tie. You can tie these FUG knots, whatever. I don't care. I don't want that knot when I'm swinging on a heavy jig. If you just go straight braid or go straight fluoro, whatever you're comfortable with, and keep it at that.
Yeah, I agree with you though. I think he wants to know, will a leader get you more bites?
Now, if you're worried about getting bites, I think stick to fluorocarbon if you feel a little more comfortable. The fact of the matter is if you're fishing jig and grass and everything, There's so much going on down there. I don't think they even know the lines there.
Nah.
No. I mean, guys worry about like tying a jig on and snipping the knot so it doesn't have a big tag end and it looks funny. Well, I mean, if you're worried about an inch long tag end, what about the other 30 feet of line that's attached to it? I mean, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah,
I think that's it's more appearance what you're comfortable with. If you feel that makes it better, then do it. Because you're going to have more confidence in it. But as far as like a leader goes, I avoid the knot every chance I get. Now, spinning reels and stuff, that's a different story, but I'm not throwing a spinning rod with the jigs. So I'll throw braid to fluoro on all my spinning rods. That's all I do anymore.
Yep.
Same here. Now, what about skipping jigs?
Skipping jigs is really about mechanics.
Yes. Any tips on? I mean, a co-angler is very difficult because you're limited in. You got
all right. Number one tip: bring an extra spool of line.
Yep.
Because you're gonna, if you're gonna learn how to do this, it's gonna take a lot of time and it's gonna take a lot of line.
Yep.
I like to think I'm okay at it. I'm definitely not a Dustin Wilkes.
No.
It's going 48 feet under a dock. No, that's not happening for me. It might get there once or twice. But obviously the head size and I think the way you use a trailer matters.
Yep.
So like before we were talking about hanging a trailer or threading a trailer. Obviously threading a trailer makes a jig. It's a lot easier to skip.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
You got less things pivoting when it hits the water if the trailer's sitting on it. The other thing, the flatter the head. Obviously, football heads you're not gonna skip. You're just asking for trouble. But any kind of like the flat jigs. Let me see if I can bring this one up here again so I can see it. So you can see it. Any kind of head like that, like the rock head.
Yep.
That's a good skipping jig. Herb Reed from Lunker City makes a really good skipping jig. It's like it's a great combination jig to have in your box. If you're not a big jig fisherman, but you want to have a multi-purpose jig, it's a little more specialized, but it's his panhead jig. Okay.
Oh.
And it's a round head, a flat round head. It looks like a thick penny.
Oh.
And it's a great swim jig. So if you want to have something that's a combo, that's a swim jig that'll track through the weeds, and it's a great skipping jig because it's dead flat.
Oh.
Yeah, he makes
cool.
he makes a bunch of basic, really great colors, and it's just that's all you really need.
Cool.
Joseph Berthelot. I haven't heard his name in a while. Right? That's where.
Yep.
That's like where I fish the most. Every single cast, you're all up in structure. There's no such thing as clear open water down in Louisiana.
Absolutely.
Now, I never had the pleasure of fishing Louisiana, but I kind of think I like it.
Yeah,
I would like it. I like swamps. I like shallow mud in no water kind of fishing. That's why I think I love Florida. I love Florida's great.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know, man.
You guys got it spoiled up in upstate New York. Everything's clean and clear water and
I don't know. They shut a couple lakes down this year because of the algae.
Hey.
Yeah. Ooh.
I still don't understand. They're like, the politics behind weeds and how they try to eliminate stuff. It's such a, and then they end up hurting a lake and then they blame the fishermen. And it's like you take a big part of the ecosystem out of a place like that. And then they wonder, the fishing went downhill and went bad. I was like, really? You took the home base of everything that lives and just eliminated it.
Yeah, their hiding place. That's where the minnows hide. I went to Eufaula last year down in Alabama. Known for grass. Took my frogs. Get down there. No grass. Anywhere. No grass. I'm like,
really? Southern Champlain. We used to fish chestnut.
Yep.
Okay. Oh, it's evasive. It's evasive. I'm tired of hearing about evasive. At what point does it not become evasive? Because I'm 58 and the chestnut was there way before me. So it's like, when does it not become evasive and it just becomes what's there? You know, 100 years, 150 years, because it's been around that long. You know? And and you got, God forbid, excuse me, but you got these ding dongs out there in kayaks, you know, pulling each little strand of weed, you know, saving the environment. And I'm like, you know, I was trying to flip that yesterday.
Yeah.
Leave it alone. It's not hurting anything. It's not in the main channel, you know?
Yep.
And I mean, I remember years ago, man, fishing down in Thai and going to South Bay and fishing the chestnut. It was amazing. It was amazing. And now it's all, you don't even see it. They chop it up so much.
Yeah. Well, they did Chickamauga that way. I remember I lived down in Tennessee, and like in late 80s, early 90s, they took all the grass out, fishing died, started letting the grass grow up, and look at it now.
Yeah, well, here in the lakes, again, we got a bunch of ding-dongs, and they put a bunch of grass carp in Candlewood, our home lake. And I mean, I don't know how this lake survives, because it's man, I think you're just asking for, you know, to hurt it. Because right now you're still getting great limits, but who knows? I mean, there's not a stitch of grass in it anymore. And it used to be amazing.
Yep. Hey, Barker Rugers is on here now.
Yeah, ding dongs and kayaks. He's looking at you, Rob.
Yeah,
Rob. I'm not pulling grass. I'm flipping grass. Okay, I'll just get that straight.
There's a difference. There's the ding dong kayakers I'm talking about are the tree hugging hippie ones that just like they want to kill every weed in the lake.
Yeah, a little different.
Now, I remember years ago. Well, back in 2012, our first Federation tournament was on out of Thai.
No, it was Cayuga.
Was it the first? Yeah.
Because I won it.
Thai. Yeah. And Pickard and I pre-fished, and we were like, hey, let's go down to South Bay. We went down there, and it's like, no,
it's gone.
Gone.
Dang.
Yeah, it's gone. I mean, and I think it affects, Frank, you're not wrong. Bass are just like redneck kids on a playground. They're happy. Yep, exactly.
Yeah, pretty much.
Oh, but yeah, I mean, you've seen it. And I don't know if one thing leads into the other, but when like they got rid of the chestnut, now all of a sudden I noticed there's like all these amazing reeds and stuff that we used to have down in Thai and stuff. A lot of the reed heads are gone.
Yep.
Some of it's silted in. You know, it got you know, it just, so it's not, the water depth isn't near the reeds, and the water fluctuation has a lot to do with that. I'm sure.
Yep.
You know, sometimes some years you get high water, you'll get fish in the reeds, but there's section of reeds, even just up in Champlain, up in Plattsburgh. We were up there this weekend, and like a whole section of Missisquoi, like it used to be reed beds everywhere. They're gone. I mean, gone, nothing.
Huh.
And I know some people say they're susceptible, like when we get the hurricanes and stuff, it tears everything up. And they say that a lot about the storms down in Florida.
Yeah.
That it moves the grass around. But I mean, I don't know. The reeds they seem awful tough and hardy, but I mean, when I tell you they are gone, they are gone. There's like nothing where they used to be.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's crazy. I think the chestnuts, especially down south, Champlain, they protected a lot.
Yeah.
The shoreline.
Oh yeah.
And now it's eroding.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You know, and we all, you know, I think, not to get too crazy spiritual, but we always have this perception that we're saving the planet. You know, we have to protect nature. You know, we're kind of part of it.
Yep.
So when you talk about evasive, you know what's evasive? A bunch of houses on a lake. They're not supposed to be there.
Yep.
You know? I think we take ourselves out of the equation because we're too damn smart sometimes for our own good. And, you know, we think we're going to make something better. The problem is you don't know truly what's going to happen 15 years from now.
Yeah.
Okay. Everybody calls the gobies and the zebra mussels evasive, but look at what it did for the smallmouth fishery up at Thousand Islands.
It's terrible.
Yeah, horrible. Don't go.
Yeah.
But what I guess the point I'm trying to make is they got there because of us, because we're part of nature, and we kind of created that, not that we did it on purpose,
right?
But it was just the natural course of things.
Yeah.
So, who's to say it wasn't supposed to happen that way?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And sometimes some things get hurt, and some things turn out to be amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that happened down in Lake Cumberland, close to me. They had fixed a dam, so they dropped the lake low for like 3 or 4 years longer than it's supposed to. And these trees all grew up like that, 2 or 3 inches thick on the shoreline.
Yeah.
Helped the fishing tremendously. They're still there.
Oh,
tremendous difference.
Years ago, John, I don't remember what year this was, but one of the New York Federation banquets, one of the biologists from BASS came and did a talk.
Yep.
And he talked about how some of those lakes reacted like southern lakes, like down in Georgia and Alabama, when the water levels went down.
Yep.
And it killed the grass, and the spotted bass all of a sudden got a hold because they're aggressive.
Yep.
They turned into amazing spotted bass lakes. And then when the water came back up, from rains and stuff, and the grass started coming back, all of a sudden the largemouth started coming back because it helped their spawning habitat. It was a natural cycle. But of course, you see it happen in 5 years down there. I mean, Florida strain largemouth in 5 years is 5 pounds. A northern strain largemouth that's 5 pounds is probably 12 years old. So the cycle is a lot slower up here. But it's funny because over the course of, say, 20 years or 25 years, I've seen it on Candlewood. Candlewood used to be great largemouth fishing, and it still is. But you saw how the years of the drawdown that hurt the grass, all of a sudden the smallmouth fishing exploded. I mean, you don't if you don't go out there and catch a 20-pound bag of smallmouth, you're not going to win a tournament. And it got to the point where I think the smallmouth were aggressive. They had incredible spawns because of the drawdowns, and then they got a real good hold of the lake. And then you saw the largemouth decline, and then the grass started coming back for a couple of years, and the largemouth fishing started coming back. The smallmouth stayed, just like the spot stayed down south.
Yeah.
And it's just like, again, natural cycle of things. It just takes a lot longer up here than it does down south.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it was pretty interesting because what he said was exactly what I saw happen like on Candlewood over the course of maybe like 15, 20 years.
Yeah. All right, Frank. I've enjoyed this. It's kind of like old school, a class reunion type of thing. I do have a question for you that
Sure
is a little bit off topic.
Okay.
What's your favorite homemade cookie?
Homemade cookie?
Yeah.
All right. Well, years ago, my godmother, she passed away years ago. She used to make these most amazing oatmeal raisin cookies.
Okay.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. I still remember how good they tasted. And I've yet to find one that's as good. I've eaten some really good oatmeal raisin cookies.
Okay. But
not like that.
All right.
I understand how she made them, but they were good.
The reason I ask is my wife's a part-time baker.
Really?
And years ago, probably about 4 years ago, her and I had a podcast. And the one question she would ask everybody was, what's their favorite homemade cookie? So I figure I'd carry it on.
There you go.
So, no, but
I will be expecting a package in the mail then.
Ooh. Yeah, I don't have your address. No, we can make that happen.
Yeah.
But no, we're just pointing the show while I want to give you time to talk about people who've helped you along the way, people you want to thank, sponsors, or, someone who helped you along the way or whatever.
Hint.
But no, go ahead and take over.
Well, I mean, right now I've been working with Al Cappy from Massachusetts, Al Capichetti. He works with Mersky Breeding. He's always helped me out a lot, and I always want to thank him. And he's he's part of the team with Luz and Strike King.
Yep.
And phenomenal equipment, and it's helped me immensely because when you work with excellent equipment, it makes your life so much easier.
Oh yeah.
But the one thing that's amazing about Luz is they have a section of reels, and one of their bait casting reels, it's the $99 reel, is like a phenomenal piece of equipment.
Yep.
It's better than stuff that I had 20 years ago.
Oh yeah.
And what's nice is that anybody can get into bait casting and do it. Let's face it. It's not always easy to do everything with a spinning rod. Everything has its purpose, like we talked about as far as rods and reels. So one of the things, a lot of those Team Luz rods and reels are phenomenal price points.
Yep.
Like the old Crush series, for under $200, you got a rod and a reel that any tournament fisherman can use.
Absolutely.
So that's one of the things. And then Strike King's a phenomenal company as well. Anything you ever need is made by Strike King. I mean, there's nothing from hooks to sinkers to every kind of plastic you can imagine to flip and jigs.
And crappie stuff. They got some great crappie stuff too as well.
Yeah. Wally.
Yep. No, Wally. Yeah, I know Wally.
Yep. So, that's, there's been a lot of people that helped me along the way. As far as mentors, like I mentioned earlier, Rich Lesky, he's probably, one of the people that I learned a lot from. And what's nice is when, years ago when I started tournament fishing in the club, some of the things, I was always like crazy fast, rambunctious, but I grew up with a bunch of guys that were incredible finesse fishermen. Zaleski, Dougie Eriquez, Hank Millard, Artie Singer. These guys are all wanting to throw a grub on 6-pound test. And, you'd appreciate that being down near Dale Hollow.
Oh, yeah.
I always, when I got into tournament fishermen, I was like, why can't we run down the bank throwing a spinnerbait or a flip? So as I started learning and developing, and that's how kind of Eddie and I got to know each other, was in a club. And, made me realize that, I'm not that far off power fishing.
Yep.
So what's nice is to help me to balance with my mentors, and then, started tournament fishing, that I can do anything now. I love that. I love, I'm just as comfortable with a drop shot in my hand now as I am with a flipping stick.
Absolutely.
I have the flipping stick.
Yeah, same here.
Yeah.
Same here. But no, Pete Knight told me the year that we won Angler of the Year, he's like, if you can't catch him on a drop shot, you're not going to be able to catch him at all. Well, the only place I threw a drop shot was St. Lawrence.
Yeah. You had to.
Yeah.
Yeah. We were talking about this earlier about the, being a co-angler and some of the difficulties in being a co-angler. When I was doing the seminars, there's two questions I got was, what can I do? What kind of lure can I use? And really, it's not about that as much as it is mechanics.
Yeah.
You're going to have horrible casting angles. I don't care, how good of a fisherman you are or you think you are. You're going to have horrible casting angles being a co-angler. That's just one of the challenges you guys are going to have. So the more efficient you can be and a better caster than your boater is going to be so much better for you than worrying about, a specific lure or a specific technique.
Yep.
Correct.
That's the number one thing. And then the other thing I used to get, the other question you always get is, what's your favorite color? What's the best color? And I used to give them 3: dark, light, and obnoxious.
Yep.
Anything that falls into those categories. Dark, if you like black, green pumpkin, then buy everything black and green pumpkin. Light, if you like smoke, that's your light color. Everything's smoke. Obnoxious falls into, the bubble gums and the whites and stuff if you need it. But a lot of it is mental and mechanics.
Yeah. The
2 M's, M&M.
There we go.
Or when they asked me my favorite color, I said, whatever the fish want that day.
Yeah. Whatever the fish wants that day is the same thing you always throw because you've got a tackle box full of everything, and you always end up with the 1 or 2 things that you always do.
Yep.
You're right.
I could probably eliminate everything in my boat and fish out of a box that big.
Yeah. How many times do you use the same lure all day? You tie it on in the morning. If you don't hang it up, fish it all day.
Yep. Keep it simple. Jigs, black, brown, some green pumpkin, crankbaits, shad, chartreuse, crayfish. That's it. Whatever you like, buy them all like that.
Yep.
Absolutely.
So. All right, buddy. Well, hey, thank you very much for coming on.
Hey, no problem. Thank you. This is a pleasure. It's fun.
We'll talk a little bit later, and we'll schedule for something else. Maybe we'll do the history of something or.
Yeah, I'd love to talk to you about it. Yeah, we got a lot of people here that, especially like Herbie with Lunker City. He was quite the innovator, and I think people don't realize a lot of the history and behind stuff was developed up here in the Northeast.
Yeah. Sluggo. I threw Sluggo quite a bit back in the day.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yep.
All
right, buddy. Well, hey, you take care.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Hey,
take care.
Talk to you again.
All right, man. Thank you. All right.
All right.
Man, that was an awesome dude. Awesome dude.
He is. He's great. I learned he doesn't know it, but I learned a lot just by listening to him eavesdropping on some conversations.
Oh yeah.
In the Federation, and learn a little bit from him that way and stuff like that. But thank you all for tuning in for this week. Appreciate it. Everybody have a safe weekend. Have fun. Catch fish. Anything else, Rob?
No, we'll catch you back Monday. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Give us some likes and subscribes, and we'll catch all y'all Monday. So appreciate everybody, and peace out.
From every strand on the line of your reel to the rods to the